The Arcturus Nebula stretched across the view screen like a bruise on the fabric of space. Purple and blue gases swirled in patterns that would have been beautiful if Captain Elena Vasquez had any attention to spare for beauty. She didn't. Her eyes were fixed on the damage report scrolling across her command chair's display, and every line made her jaw tighten a little more. The carrier Indomitable drifted through the nebula with 3 escorts. 4 ships. That was all that remained of the 5th Fleet after New Karachi. 12 hours ago, they'd had 23 warships. Now they had 4, and calling them warships was generous. The Indomitable had a hole in her port side big enough to fly a shuttle through. The heavy cruiser Defiant was venting atmosphere from 6 decks. The destroyers Tenacious and Relentless were in even worse shape, limping along on backup reactors that had never been designed to move ships this large. Chief Engineer Marcus Chen appeared on the communications screen, his face streaked with grease and exhaustion. "Captain, I'm holding the fusion cores together with spare parts in spite at this point. We've got maybe 48 hours before the whole reactor assembly decides it's had enough." "Make it 72, Vasquez said. "It wasn't a request." Chen laughed, a bitter sound. "Sure. And while I'm working miracles, want me to fix that hole in the hull and maybe regenerate the 300 crew we lost?" Vasquez didn't smile. 317. She knew the exact number. She'd read every name on the casualty list. "Just keep us moving, Marcus. That's all I need." The engineering display winked out, and Vasquez turned her attention to the tactical station. Lieutenant Sarah Park sat hunched over her console, her young face illuminated by the soft glow of the sensors. Park was 24, fresh from the academy 6 months ago, and she'd aged a decade in the last 3 days of running battles. "Lieutenant, what do our sensors show?" Park's fingers danced across her controls. "The nebula's still playing hell with long-range detection, but close range is clear. No contacts within 50,000 kilometers." She paused, then added quietly, "That'll change soon, won't it, Captain?" Vasquez nodded. The Kresh had been hunting them since New Karachi, staying just outside sensor range, letting the human ships exhaust themselves trying to escape. It was a predator's game, and the Kresh were very good predators. They'd conquered 17 star systems in the last 50 years, and they'd done it by being patient, methodical, and utterly ruthless. "Contact," Park's voice cracked like a whip. "Multiple contacts bearing 270 range closing fast. I count 20 ships. No, 30, 40. Her voice dropped to a whisper. 60 ships, Captain." "They've got 60 ships." The bridge fell silent. 60 Kresh warships against 4 crippled human vessels. It wasn't a battle. It was an execution, the communications console chirped. Vasquez knew what that meant. "Put it through." The view screen shifted, and a face appeared that would haunt humanity's nightmares for generations. War Prime Zekthar of the Kresh Dominion looked like someone had taken a crocodile, given it intelligence, and dressed it in military uniform. Scales the color of old brass covered his face, and his eyes were golden slits that held no mercy whatsoever. "Human vessel," Zekthar said, his translator giving his words a sibilant quality. "You have fought well. Your species shows more courage than most prey. But courage without victory is merely entertaining failure. I offer you terms. Surrender now, and your deaths will be swift." Vasquez stood up from her command chair. She was a small woman, barely 5'4", but something in the way she held herself made her seem much larger. "You're offering us death either way. Why would we choose surrender?" Zekthar's mouth opened in what might have been a smile, revealing rows of pointed teeth. "Because the alternative is death after prolonged suffering. We will dissect your ships, we will study your tactics, and when you finally die, it will be slowly in our research facilities teaching us how human bodies break." He leaned forward. "I have destroyed 3 of your fleets, human. I know how you think. I know how you fight. You have no options left." "We have one option," Vasquez said quietly. "We can make you regret coming after us." For the first time, something flickered in Zekthar's eyes. Surprise, perhaps, or curiosity. Fascinating. Most species beg at this point. "You threaten. I will enjoy studying your corpse, human captain." The screen went dark. Vasquez turned to her crew. Every face on the bridge was looking at her, waiting. These were good people. They'd followed her through hell, and they'd follow her through whatever came next. She owed them honesty. "They've given us 1 hour to surrender. We're not going to do that. Chief Chen, I need 8 hours of miracles. Lieutenant Park, I need tactical options that don't exist. Commander Reeves, I need every able-bodied crew member ready to fight. She paused, then added, "And I need someone to tell me how we turn this ambush around." Park's fingers were already moving across her console. "Captain, I might have something. It's crazy, probably impossible, and definitely suicidal." Vasquez smiled for the first time in days. "Those are my favorite kind of plans, Lieutenant. Show me what you've got." Outside the Indomitable, the Kresh fleet began to tighten its noose, 60 warships against 4 broken ones. The outcome seemed certain, but War Prime Zekthar was about to learn something that 17 conquered species had never managed to teach him. Humans were most dangerous when they had nothing left to lose. Marcus Chen floated through the engineering deck in zero gravity. His magnetic boots deactivated to save power. Every watt of electricity mattered now. The fusion reactor hummed beneath him, a sound that used to be steady and reassuring but now carried an irregular rhythm that made his teeth ache. Reactors weren't supposed to sound like that. Nothing on this ship was supposed to be working the way it currently was, and yet somehow, through desperation and improvisation, the Indomitable still moved. "Strip everything," Chen told his team over the communication channel. "Life support from decks 9 through 15. Artificial gravity from all non-essential sections. I want every power conduit feeding into weapons and engines. And someone get me the coolant reserves." A young engineer named Rodriguez spoke up, confusion clear in her voice. "Chief, the coolant reserves? If we drain those, we can't regulate the reactor temperature during combat operations. We'll overheat." "We'll overheat if we survive long enough to worry about it," Chen replied. "Right now I need power more than I need safety margins. The captain's buying us time. We can't waste it." The engineering teams scattered throughout the ship, their magnetic boots clanking against metal as they pulled apart systems that had taken years to build. Chen watched his displays as power readings slowly climbed. 5%, 8%, 12, not enough. Not nearly enough. But it was something. On the bridge, Sarah Park stared at her tactical display until her eyes burned. The Kresh fleet formation floated in the holographic projection above her console, 60 red icons surrounding 4 blue ones. She'd run the simulation 47 times. 47 times the human ships had been destroyed in less than 10 minutes, but the 48th simulation was different. "Captain," Park said, her voice shaking slightly, "I need you to look at this." Vasquez crossed the bridge in 3 quick strides. "What do you have, Lieutenant?" Park brought up the sensor logs from the previous battle. "When we retreated from New Karachi, we passed through a debris field. Here." She highlighted a section of space. The ammunition ship Thunderhead was destroyed right here. But look at these readings. Some of its warheads are still intact, just drifting in the nebula. Vasquez leaned closer. "How many warheads?" "I count at least 40 nuclear missiles, maybe more that sensors can't detect through the interference. They're armed, Captain. Their safety mechanisms failed when the ship exploded, but they didn't detonate. They're just floating there, waiting." "Waiting for what?" Park's fingers trembled as she manipulated the display. "Waiting for us to shoot them." She brought up a simulation. The blue icons representing human ships moved through the red Kresh formation in a complex pattern, leading them toward the debris field. Then small yellow dots appeared where the warheads drifted. "If we can position the Kresh fleet in the right spot and detonate these warheads simultaneously, the blast radius would catch most of their ships." Vasquez studied the projection in silence. The timing would need to be perfect. The human ships would need to move through the debris field at combat speed, damaged as they were, threading between chunks of wreckage that could tear them apart. They'd need to fire on the warheads at precisely the right moment, coordinating across 4 ships with communication systems that were barely functional, and they'd need to survive the blast themselves. "It's impossible," Vasquez said finally. "Yes, Captain. Show me how we do it anyway." For the next 6 hours, the human ships transformed. Chen's teams ripped out internal components with cutting torches and sheer determination. The mess halls went dark. The recreational decks lost pressure as their atmosphere was vented to create thrust reserves. Officer quarters were stripped of their gravity generators. Slowly, impossibly, the battered warships began to accumulate power. On the Kresh flagship, War Prime Zekthar watched with growing fascination. He'd expected panic. He'd expected desperate escape attempts or perhaps surrender negotiations. Instead, the human ships had gone almost completely dark, their energy signatures dropping to minimal levels. His sensor showed only the barest life support and propulsion. "They're preparing to die," his tactical officer reported, shutting down systems to preserve their crew in the final moments. But Zekthar wasn't so sure. He'd intercepted some of the human communications. Most species, when facing death, prayed to their gods or said goodbye to their families. The humans were talking about power conduits and thrust vectors. They were cracking jokes about dying in vacuum. One engineer had even made a comment about how at least they wouldn't have to file repair reports if they were dead. What strange creatures, Zekthar muttered. They face extinction with humor and arithmetic. In the Indomitables conference room, now operating in zero gravity with only emergency lighting, Vasquez gathered her senior officers. Chen floated in looking like he'd been through a war already, which wasn't far from the truth. Park clutched a datapad with her tactical plan. Commander Reeves, the executive officer, had a grim expression that suggested he knew what was coming. "This is the plan," Vasquez said, bringing up Park's simulation on the room's single working display. "It violates every doctrine we've ever learned. It requires precision we shouldn't be capable of in our current condition. And if we make a single mistake, we all die." She let that sink in for a moment, then continued, "But if it works, we take most of that Kresh fleet with us. And even if we die, we show them that humans don't surrender. We show them that hunting us comes with a price." Reeves spoke first. "It's insane. Yes. We'll probably all die anyway. Probably." "I'm in." One by one, the officers nodded. Chen grinned, a wild expression on his exhausted face. "I've been working miracles all day." "What's one more?" Park just raised her hand, unable to trust her voice. Vasquez looked at each of them, memorizing their faces. "Good people, brave people. Then let's show these reptilian bastards what humans do best. We improvise, we adapt, and we overcome. Stations, everyone. We've got 1 hour until showtime." As they dispersed, Vasquez pulled up the casualty list from New Karachi one more time. 317 names. They deserved justice. They deserved to be remembered. And in 1 hour they'd get both. The Indomitables' engines roared to life with a sound like thunder trapped in a metal cage. After hours of silence, the sudden burst of power startled even the crew who'd been expecting it. The carrier lurched forward, accelerating toward the far edge of the nebula. Behind it, the 3 escort ships followed, their damaged hulls groaning under the strain of emergency thrust. On the Kresh flagship, alarms sounded immediately. War Prime Zekthar leaned forward in his command throne, his golden eyes narrowing. "They're running. Finally they show sense." He turned to his tactical officer. "Pursuit formation. All ships. I want them caught before they reach the nebula's edge." The Kresh fleet surged forward like a school of mechanical sharks scenting blood in the water. 60 warships accelerated in a coordinated pattern, breaking into smaller hunting groups. It was textbook tactics for overwhelming a fleeing enemy. Divide and conquer, surround and destroy. Zekthar had used this formation dozens of times against dozens of species. Inside the Indomitables bridge, Sarah Park watched the Kresh fleet movements with the intensity of a surgeon making the first cut. "They're taking the bait, Captain." Formation splitting as predicted. Group Alpha moving to flank, Group Beta pursuing directly, Group Gamma swinging wide. "Helm, adjust course 2 degrees starboard," Vasquez ordered. "Make it look natural, like we're trying to avoid the debris field." The helmsman, a veteran named Jackson with 20 years of service, made the adjustment with practiced ease. The Indomitable shifted its trajectory just slightly, angling away from the densest part of the wreckage. To the Kresh sensors, it would look like smart evasion. In reality, it was the first step of an intricate dance. The destroyer Tenacious reported in, its captain's voice crackling through damaged communications. "Indomitable, this is Tenacious. We're in position at waypoint Delta. Hull integrity at 30%. We can make it." "You'd better," Vasquez replied. "If you miss your mark, this whole thing falls apart." The Kresh fleet pushed deeper into the nebula, their sensors struggling with the interference from the swirling gases. It didn't matter. They could see the human ships ahead, fleeing in panic. Zekthar allowed himself a moment of satisfaction. The humans had fought well, but in the end, they were just another species that would learn to kneel before the Kresh dominion. Marcus Chen's voice came through on Vasquez's private channel. "Captain, the reactor's screaming at me. We're pushing at 20% past redline. If we keep this up for more than 10 minutes, we're going to have a containment breach. We only need 8 minutes, Chief. Hold it together." "That's what I'm telling the reactor. Not sure it's listening." The human ships moved through the debris field with a precision that seemed impossible given their condition. The Indomitable threaded between chunks of destroyed vessels, using maneuvering thrusters that should have failed hours ago. The Defiant rolled on its axis to avoid a spinning piece of hull plating the size of a house. The destroyers weaved and dodged, their smaller size an advantage in the tight quarters. Behind them, the Kresh fleet followed, their larger ships having more difficulty with the obstacles. Their formation began to compress, ships moving closer together to navigate the wreckage. Exactly as Park had predicted. "Waypoint Charlie in 30 seconds, Park announced, her voice steady now. The fear was still there, but it was buried under layers of focus and determination. "All ships report ready." Vasquez pulled up the tactical display. The Kresh fleet was spreading out in the wrong way now, clustering in the center of the debris field. The yellow dots marking the floating warheads surrounded them in a sphere they couldn't see through the sensor interference. It was beautiful and terrible at the same time. "All ships, this is Indomitable Actual," Vasquez said over the fleet channel. "On my mark, execute Maneuver Omega. Every shot counts. Every second counts. If there's a heaven, we'll meet there. If there's not, we'll make our own. Mark in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, execute." The Indomitable reversed thrust so hard that crew members not strapped in were thrown against bulkheads. The massive carrier came about in a turn that should have torn it apart. Emergency thrusters firing in sequences Chen had programmed himself. The 3 escort ships performed similar maneuvers, each one pivoting with desperate grace. They weren't running anymore. They were attacking. War Prime Zekthar had one moment of confused clarity before everything went to hell. The human ships had stopped fleeing. Instead, they'd reversed course and were now between his fleet and open space. His tactical display showed weapon locks activating on every human vessel. But they weren't targeting his ships. They were targeting empty space. "What are they?" he began. The first warhead detonated. It was a standard human nuclear missile, designed to crack open enemy battleships. When it exploded, it released the equivalent energy of 35 kilotons of TNT, creating a brief sun in the darkness of space. That alone wouldn't have been enough to seriously damage the Kresh fleet. But the detonation triggered a chain reaction. The warhead next to it cooked off from the thermal pulse. Then another, and another. Within 3 seconds, 40 nuclear warheads detonated in a cascading wave of destruction that turned the center of the Arcturus Nebula into a hell that would have impressed the devil himself. The Kresh ships, packed together in their pursuit formation, had nowhere to go. The first wave of explosions caught 12 vessels completely, vaporizing them instantly. The second wave crippled 18 more, their shields failing under the impossible onslaught. The third wave scattered the rest, sending ships spinning out of control with melted armor and fried electronics. On the Indomitable, the blast wave hit like the hand of an angry god. Vasquez felt the deck jump beneath her feet. Alarms screamed from every console. The lights flickered and died, replaced by emergency red lighting. But the ship held. Chen's modifications, crazy as they'd been, had positioned the human vessels just far enough from the blast center to survive. The destroyer Tenacious wasn't so lucky. Its damaged hull couldn't take the stress. Vasquez watched on sensors as the ship broke apart, its spine snapping like a dried twig. But even in death, the Tenacious gave its crew time. Escape pods launched like dandelion seeds in the wind, vectoring toward the Indomitable's position. "Recovery teams, get those pods," Vasquez ordered. "Helm, take us into the fire." "Weapons. Anything that comes out of that inferno, you kill it. We started this dance. Now we finish it." The broken human warships advanced into the nuclear firestorm, hunting the survivors of their trap. And War Prime Zekthar, his flagship tumbling through space with its engines blown out, finally understood what it meant to underestimate humanity. The Arcturus Nebula burned. Nuclear fire painted the swirling gases in shades of orange and white, creating shadows that danced like demons across the hull of the Indomitable. Through this hell came the human warships, their sensors sweeping for survivors of the blast. They found them. A Kresh destroyer emerged from the fire, its hull blackened and pitted but its weapons still functional. Sarah Park's console lit up with targeting solutions. "Contact bearing 352, range 20,000 kilometers. She's hurt but still dangerous. Railguns, fire," Vasquez ordered. The Indomitable's main batteries spoke, and slugs of depleted uranium crossed the distance at a fraction of light speed. The crash destroyer tried to evade, but its maneuvering thrusters were damaged. The first slug punched through its forward shield. The second penetrated its armor. The third found something vital deep inside, and the enemy ship came apart in a bright flash. Contact destroyed, Park reported. I'm reading multiple targets emerging from the debris field. They're disorganized, trying to regroup. Don't let them, Vasquez said. Weapons free. Kill anything that moves. What followed was less a battle than a slaughter, though it was the humans doing the slaughtering this time. The crash ships that survived the initial blast were scattered, their formations broken, their command structure in chaos. The human vessels, damaged as they were, had the advantage now. They knew where they were. They knew what they were doing. And they were angry. The heavy cruiser Defiant engaged 3 crash frigates simultaneously, its point defense systems tracking with mechanical precision despite operating on backup power. The destroyers, relentless, moved through the debris like a shark, using the wreckage as cover, emerging only to fire and then disappearing again. The Indomitable's fighter wings, held in reserve until now, launched into the chaos. Commander Reeves watched from the tactical station as the fighter squadrons spread out across the battlefield. 36 fighters against what was left of a fleet that had numbered 60 ships. Angel Squadron, this is Indomitable Actual. You are weapons free. Show them why we call you angels. Because you're delivering judgment. The fighters dove into the maelstrom with a ferocity born of desperation and rage. They were outnumbered, outgunned, but they had something the Kresh didn't have anymore. They had hope. On the Kresh flagship, War Prime Zekthar clung to his command throne as the ship tumbled through space. Emergency lighting flickered. The air tasted of smoke and burned electronics. His tactical officer was dead, killed when a console exploded. His communications officer was trying to restore contact with the fleet. But most channels were filled with static and screams. Status report, Zekthar demanded. The sensor operator, blood running from a cut on his scaled forehead, checked his barely functional displays. War Prime, I count 47 ships destroyed or disabled. 13 vessels have entered emergency jump, heading for home space. The rest are engaged with the human forces. 47 ships gone in less than 10 minutes. Zekthar's mind struggled to process it. He destroyed entire planetary defense fleets with fewer losses. How had 4 broken human vessels done this? The answer came to him as he watched a human fighter strafe past his viewport, its weapons stitching holes across a Kresh frigate's hull. They'd turned weakness into strength. They'd used their own dead as weapons. They'd fought with a creativity and viciousness that no species in the Dominion had ever shown. They'd weaponized their desperation. Get life support working, Zekthar ordered. And get me a channel to the human commander. Marcus Chen's voice echoed through the Indomitable's engineering spaces, hoarse from shouting orders. Reactor 4 is critical. Shut it down before it takes the whole ship with it. Redirect power from Reactor 3. And somebody get me a damage control team on Deck 7. We've got a hull breach opening up. The ship shuddered as another explosion rocked its frame. Chen grabbed a support beam to keep from falling. Around him, his engineering teams worked with the efficiency of long practice, rooting around damaged systems, patching what could be patched, and abandoning what couldn't be saved, Chief. We've got escape pods coming in from the Tenacious, Rodriguez reported. Bay 4 is receiving them now. Chen felt a moment of relief. The Tenacious was gone, but her crew was alive. That was something. That was everything. Good. Get medical teams down there, and find space for them. I don't care if we have to stack people in the cargo holds. On the bridge, Park's console chimed with an incoming transmission. Captain, we're being hailed. It's the Kresh flagship. Vasquez exchanged a glance with Reeves. Put it through. War Prime Zekthar's face appeared on the screen. He looked older than before, his scales dull, his eyes dimmed. Human captain. I wish to discuss terms. Go ahead, Vasquez said, her voice flat. A ceasefire. My ships will withdraw. We will leave this system and not return. In exchange, you allow us to recover our wounded and escape. Vasquez looked around her bridge. Every console was damaged. Every officer was exhausted. The ship itself was held together by emergency force fields and determination. They'd won, but barely. If the Kresh rallied and coordinated a proper counterattack, the humans would die. This was their chance to survive, agreed, Vasquez said. You have 2 hours to collect your people and leave. After that, any Kresh vessel in this system will be destroyed. Zekthar nodded slowly. You have taught us a valuable lesson, human. We will not forget it. He paused, then added, Before I go, I must know. How did you think of it? Using your own dead as weapons? Vasquez's expression hardened. Because humans don't waste anything, War Prime. Not resources, not opportunities, and definitely not sacrifice. Every person who died at New Karachi died fighting. They earned the right to hit back one more time. The transmission ended. Across the battlefield, the surviving crash ships began collecting their damaged vessels and wounded crew. The human ships watched, weapons trained and ready, until the last crash vessel entered jump and disappeared. Then, finally, the bridge of the Indomitable fell silent. Vasquez sat in her command chair and let exhaustion wash over her. They'd survived. Against impossible odds, against overwhelming numbers, they'd survived and won. Casualty report, she said quietly. Reeves checked his console. Total dead across the fleet, 847, including the tenacious crew we lost. Wounded, over 2,000. Ship damage. Extensive doesn't begin to cover it. 847. Vasquez closed her eyes. So many, too many. But they'd saved the rest. And they'd shown the crash that humanity couldn't be broken. Send a message to Fleet Command, Vasquez ordered. Tell them we're coming home. And tell them we're going to need a lot of body bags. The rescue fleet arrived 3 days later. Captain Elena Vasquez stood on what was left of the Indomitable's observation deck and watched the ships emerge from jump space. 5 heavy carriers, 10 battleships, 30 escorts. Enough firepower to level a planet. But they were 3 days too late to fight the battle. They were just in time to save the survivors. The observation deck had no atmosphere anymore. Vasquez wore a pressure suit, her helmet polarized against the glare of the nebula. Around her floated debris from the battle, pieces of crash warships mixed with fragments of human vessels. The wreckage of the Tenacious tumbled slowly past, its name still visible on a section of hull that had somehow stayed intact. Marcus Chen floated up beside her, his own suit covered in welding scars and burn marks. The rescue ships are offering to evacuate us. I told them we're not leaving until we recover every body. Good, Vasquez said. Human and Kresh both. We killed them. The least we can do is send them home. Chen was quiet for a moment. Captain, the Kresh don't retrieve their dead. Their culture considers it dishonor. They'll just leave them floating here. Then we'll retrieve them and send them back anyway. Maybe they'll learn something. Over the next week, human recovery teams combed through the debris field. Every body was found, identified if possible, and treated with respect. The human dead were prepared for burial with full military honors. The Kresh dead were placed in preservation containers and loaded onto an automated drone that would carry them back to Dominion space. When the drone launched, every human ship in the system stood at attention. It was respect for the fallen, even enemies who'd tried to kill them. The Kresh observers monitoring from their border couldn't understand it. In their culture, showing respect to defeated enemies was seen as weakness. To humans, it was simply the right thing to do. 6 months passed. The Battle of Arcturus became a legend that spread through both human and alien space. The story grew with each telling. 4 ships against 60. A trap made from nuclear fire. A carrier captain who refused to surrender. The numbers were accurate. The legend was earned. The Kresh Dominion sued for peace. It was an unprecedented move. They'd never negotiated with a species they'd intended to conquer before. But War Prime Zekthar's final transmission, sent before his life support failed, had made it clear. Never underestimate them. Never trap them. Humans are most dangerous when they have nothing left to lose. The treaty was signed in neutral space. The Kresh agreed to withdraw from contested systems and establish a demilitarized zone. In exchange, humanity agreed to share some of their medical technology and to respect Kresh territorial boundaries. It wasn't friendship, but it was peace, and that was enough. The memorial station was built at the site of the battle. Constructed from salvaged materials from both fleets, it served as both a reminder and a warning. The central chamber held 2 walls of names. One listed the 847 humans who died. The other listed the 3,012 Kresh casualties. Both were carved in the same stone, given the same honor. Captain Vasquez, now promoted to admiral, stood in the memorial chamber during the dedication ceremony. Ambassadors from a dozen species attended, including a Kresh delegation. She looked at the walls of names, reading each one silently. Jenkins, who'd told jokes even while bleeding out. Rodriguez, who'd kept the reactors running until the end. Captain Harris of the Tenacious, who'd held formation even when his ship was coming apart. Admiral Vasquez, the Kresh ambassador, approached, his movements cautious. He was younger than Zekthar had been, his scales a brighter shade of brass. "I wanted to thank you." Vasquez turned to face him. "Thank me? Your people tried to kill mine." "Yes. And you taught us that conquest has a cost we were not prepared to pay. War Prime Zekthar's logs have become required reading in our military academies. The Battle of Arcturus is studied as a cautionary tale. Because of what happened here, the Dominion has avoided 3 wars that we would have started before." He gestured at the wall of Kresh names. "These dead served a purpose, even in defeat. We honor them for that." After the ceremony ended, Vasquez remained in the memorial chamber. Sarah Park, now promoted to commander and assigned as Vasquez's tactical officer, found her there an hour later. "Admiral, the shuttle's waiting. We need to get back to Earth for the fleet review." "In a minute," Vasquez said. She was looking at one name in particular. Chen Marcus, chief engineer, killed when Reactor 3 finally gave out. 2 days after the battle ended. He'd held it together long enough to save the ship, but the radiation exposure had been too much. He'd died in the medical bay, cracking jokes to the end. He would have loved this place, Park said softly. All this salvaged tech, repurposed and working. It's exactly the kind of thing he would have built. "He did build it," Vasquez replied. "Every innovation we used in that battle, every crazy modification that shouldn't have worked but did. That was Marcus. This memorial is as much his as anyone's." They stood together in silence, 2 officers who'd survived when so many hadn't. Finally, Vasquez turned away from the wall. "Come on, Commander. We've got work to do. The galaxy doesn't wait for anyone." On Earth, the military academies added a new course to their curriculum. Unconventional Warfare, the Arcturus model. It taught officers to think beyond standard tactics, to use every available resource, to never give up even when defeat seemed certain. Young officers learned about the 5 ships that became 4, then 3, but never stopped fighting. They learned about the captain who turned a graveyard into a weapon. In the Kresh Dominion, similar lessons were taught, but from a different angle. The dangers of assumption became a mandatory class. Officers learned about the 60 ships that became 13 because they'd underestimated their prey. They learned that technological superiority meant nothing against desperate creativity. Most importantly, they learned that humans were not like other species. Humans didn't give up. Ever. 10 years after the battle, Commander Sarah Park stood on the bridge of her own ship, the new destroyer Tenacious, named after the vessel that had sacrificed itself. She was hunting pirates in a border system when her tactical officer reported contact with a Kresh patrol. "Should we go to battle stations, Captain?" the young officer asked nervously. Park smiled. "No, hail them. Let's see what they want." The Kresh captain appeared on the view screen. He looked at Park for a long moment, then said, "Captain Park, I know that name. You were at Arcturus. I was. I lost my clutch brother there. He served on the Crimson Blade. Your people recovered his body and returned it to us. My family was able to give him proper rights because of that." The Kresh captain paused. "Thank you," Park nodded. "We're all warriors. We honor the fallen, indeed. There are pirates in this system, Captain. Perhaps we could hunt them together." "I'd like that." The 2 ships, human and Kresh, set off side by side. It wasn't friendship yet. The wounds were too fresh, the memories too painful. But it was a beginning, and beginnings mattered. Back at the Arcturus Memorial, new names were added each year. Not casualties of war, but children born to the survivors. Babies named after the fallen. Schools built in memory of heroes, scholarships established for the families of the dead. The memorial wasn't just about remembering death. It was about honoring life. And in the deep black of space, the wreckage of the Battle of Arcturus slowly dispersed, spreading across the nebula like seeds. Each piece carried a story. Each fragment was a reminder. The galaxy had learned a lesson that day, written in fire and blood and sacrifice. Humans could be beaten. They could be hurt. They could be killed. But they could never ever be broken. And that made all the difference.